Right now our WakeUp times appear in the console. In this video, we're going to display them in the HTML page instead. We're also going to learn how to use JavaScript to manipulate HTML elements. Okay, so click on this calculate, we'll print the times in the console. What I want to do is to show them here instead. So let's go to our HTML and I can show you a new element. There is this element in HTML called div for division. And it kind of tries to like create a logical grouping, a division in your HTML page. And so a division, if you just put a div in there on its own, it doesn't have any particular styling. And it also doesn't show anything on the page if you don't add like anything to it. So if I save this and refresh the page, I'm not going to see anything. And if I just like add some text to it and refresh the page again, then I'll just see those texts. So let me move this under the button and then remove this text as well, and instead giving it an ID so I can get hold of it in my JavaScript code. So let's give it like WakeUp hours div. Okay, refresh this page. Now let's go back to our code, and here I'm gonna do something similar to how I got hold of the calculate button. Let's call this WakeUp hours div and give that ID here as well. Okay, and we can get this, and instead of using console log to print these values out, we can say WakeUp hours dot so there are a few different ways that you can add stuff to this div, but one of the simplest one is to just update the text content property. And so if I run this code now, we'll refresh it and run it, and you get these values printed here. All right, so let's take a look at how it works. I want to show you something. If we come over to the browser, right click, and then take a look at the view page source, it's going to show you this, which is basically the exact same HTML file that I have in here. So this is what the browser received and then rendered it in the format that you saw. Right, now this does not have I've got two of these open. This does not have anything inside the inside this div that I created. So it's like the original HTML file. So if you actually open the browser developer tools and then go to the inspector tab, you will see the same HTML is being presented to you here, but this HTML actually corresponds to the content of the page that you see at that moment, so it's more dynamic. So here, if I go and look at this div, and notice that as I like navigate to these elements, it highlights them in the page. So here I can see this div that I created, and this is the content of it. You can even like double click on it and change this to something else. And this is just helpful for like debugging purposes. It's not like this is a permanent change. But what I want to show you is that I can also actually create these elements from JavaScript. So let's go, for example, and rather than like printing the whole text, add a separate div for each one of the WakeUp times that we calculate. Okay, let's go to, well, let's refresh this to clean this up. Let's go to here in our code, and this is what we can do. We can say for every one of these times that gets calculated, let's come and create a element. We can call it cycle div, and we can do document dot create element and tell it what kind of element we want. We can use it, we can nest div inside other divs. And then we can go and say, all right, after you created this, then go ahead and add its text content to be this WakeUp time string. We're not going to need the array anymore. We can take that out. And here also, since we don't have that array, we can take this out. But instead, let me just bring this up. We can have the cycle div to be added inside the WakeUp hours div, and the way you do that is by saying append child. So why is it called a child? Because if you think about the elements you have in HTML, there is this sort of a hierarchical structure. If you're coming from a data structures course, this looks like a tree where you have a root and this has two children, right? And then each one of those nodes or elements have more children. So that's why it's called append child. All right, so let's refresh the page, calculate, and you can see now these values are being printed. If we take a look at the HTML inspector, you can see inside of the div with the ID of wake up hours, there are these other divs. We can even go and give each one of these divs its own ID. So you can call a method called setAttribute and say, I want to set the attribute ID to something like cycle dash, and then use I for the value of that cycle. Save this, refresh it, run it again. You see these numbers. Take a look at how each one of them have an ID. Now let me show you something else. If I click on this calculate again and again and again, it's keep adding these extra divs in here, because it's keep appending to whatever exists in there. That's not the desired behavior. Sometimes that might be the case. Here, that's not the case. So what I want to do is to clean up this div when I go about calculating the wake up time. So we can come here and say whatever is in it, the inner HTML, set that to an empty string, and refresh the page, run the calculate, you get these values. If you click again, it's not gonna add more divs to them. It just cleans it up and add a new set of divs in here. All right, so what we learned is that we can use JavaScript to create HTML, add content to it, set attributes for it. And so this shows how powerful JavaScript is, because we can potentially do, like, I didn't really need even to put these things in my HTML file. I could just go from my JavaScript code and create the entire content of my HTML dynamically.